Okay, for the audience that does not know you, feel free to introduce yourself.
My name is Tequila Kay. And I am, I guess, on Instagram. I hate the word; it makes me cringe, an influencer, but I guess that's the category that I fall into now.
Do you consider yourself a model? Is that the right word?
I don't. It's so funny because I'm just doing me. I am legit just doing me. So I hear it all the time. I hear like, "Oh, you're an influencer. You're a model. You're famous." I'm like, "Nah, I'm just doing me."
So tell me a little about yourself because your bio is already on Instagram, especially. It's very, very interesting. 49, veteran, mother of five, grandmother of four. So let's start with that. 49. You do not look 49. You look much younger. So I'm going to compliment you on that.
I know. Thank you very much. And then the next question I get is, what work have you had done? The only thing I had done is the girls. I had them done 2 years ago because I'm turning 50. I mean, they all, go down. And what's funny is I didn't get a lift. So a lot of people think they're natural because I just built up what I already had. So they still kind of like sit in a normal position, but now had them done 2 years ago. Aside from that, I do a little bit of Botox, touch up stuff, but I just take really good care of myself. I'll be 50 in May. My father always looks 20 years younger, always. And I take after him. I've got, great genes, thank God. I do take care of myself. I eat well. I'm not on a diet or anything crazy, but I just, eat pretty well. I'm active in the gym and, I don't smoke. I don't do any drugs, no judgment, but I don't. And I do drink, obviously, but I'm a social drinker. You know what I mean? So I think that has a lot to do with it as well as the genetics.
Well, I thought when you put 49, I thought that was almost for like the kind of like the how do I put this? Kind of like the fetishistic like aspect of that. Like some people like older women like intentionally, So I thought that was why you did it. And I was like shocked when it's like, oh, you actually are 49. I'm like, wow.
Yeah, you know what? And I didn't, and it doesn't bother me because people, make all kinds of assumptions. And of course, that's social media, right? Doesn't bug me at all. But honestly, why I did it was because I would get like these crazy comments from people like a tattoos or whatever, like you're gonna regret that when you're old. I'm like, dude, I'm 49. Like, how much older am I gonna get? I don't regret it. Like, I'm still doing it, or somebody be like, oh, that's gonna look bad when you're 80. And I'm like, well, what, correct me if I'm wrong, but what's gonna look good when I'm 80? Like nothing, so it was more like because people assume I'm young. The other thing is my husband, so this is part of the story. I've been married 29 years, 5 kids, 4 grandkids. And my husband is 53. And he, God love him, he looks his age. He doesn't look younger or older, he looks his age. So if I ever post pictures, the two of us together, oh my God, you would not believe the comments I get. They're like, oh, you married well, or you must like that money. He must be loaded. Or like, people assume I'm 20 years younger. That's my sugar daddy. I'm like, bro, we're 4 years apart. Like, so that was kind of why I put it, for the authenticity piece of it. And the other thing is, you know what? I'm proud of it. I am happy as heck. And if I could freeze time, I would freeze it any point in these last like 2, 3 years. I'm really happy. I'm really comfortable with myself. I'm happy with my life. And as a woman, I just have experienced, I think, a growth that I think a lot of women do at this age, and that they're just like, I don't care. It's very freeing to not care. You know what I mean? And because when you spend your whole life caring, and having your feelings hurt, when you suddenly don't care, it's like, oh, amazing.
Well, the next question I got to ask is the next part of your bio. So you are a veteran.
Mhm.
From like what? What in the military like did you do? Like tell me a little
I
bit.
I was in the Air Force, 1997 to 2005. It was technically the Air National Guard. I have 5 kids, and I started having kids in 1997, or sorry, 1994. Second child was 97, 94. My last child was 2009. So, honestly, I loved the Air Force. I had it fantastic, absolutely loved it. Would have gone career, but you can't do that with a big family and kids. And,
Right.
but I was there for 7 years. I was part of a civil engineering unit called Red Horse. And I was one of 2 women out of 150 men in that unit.
Right. So my next question is I want to pivot to like why you started doing this, like why you started your page, why you started doing because you do a lot of things. You do Fansly, OnlyFans, do your Instagram, Twitter, whatever, and so on and so forth. And so I got to ask why? Why'd you start?
So it's an interesting question, and I'm going to try to consolidate the answer because it's kind of a long answer. Um, I'm a much different person than I was years ago. You're not, I mean, I'm still at core the same person, but as I said earlier, when you get to a certain age and a certain point in your life, as a woman, at least, I can say that we grow, and it's very freeing to come to a place where you, at some point in your 40s, it happens, I think, to a lot of us, where you really become comfortable with yourself. You become comfortable in your own skin. You no longer care in a good way, meaning like, hey, you don't like me? No problem. It's okay. You don't have to like me. Or do I look fat in these pants? I don't really care. You know what I mean? Like things like that that used to matter when you're a younger woman don't matter anymore. You truly don't care. And so it's a very freeing place to be. Having 5 kids, my 20s and 30s, I was raising babies and I was working. I was working in corporate America. I had a couple of tattoos, nowhere like I had now. I didn't show them. I was in the tech industry. It was a very difficult industry to make your way as a woman. And certainly, we're talking 20 years ago, tattoos were not okay in corporate America. So I, did not have as many as I had now. And what I had, I would hide. And I was a mama. I didn't even stay for happy hours at work. Like I didn't, do those things because I went home to my family. And that was good. I'm not upset about that. I chose that. But then when I turned in my 40s, my kids grew up and they started moving out and they started having kids. And all of a sudden I was like, oh my gosh, I have a life. And suddenly I have some money because you spend all your money on your family and you're like broke. And now I'm like, wow, I have a life. I have money. I can go out. I can drink. I mean, I never drank before. I never went to bars, never did that, even with my husband, because I was exhausted. I was working all day and taking care of babies. And, so I think a lot of it was circumstantial in terms of the timing of my life and the timing of me personally. And that being said, I could not have done this and what I'm doing now 10 years ago. Forget OnlyFans. I'm not even talking about that. I'm just talking about Instagram. I couldn't have done it 10 years ago. Every time somebody said something horrible, I would have gone in the room and cried. That's the truth, because I have a very sensitive heart. I'm a very good person. It matters to me to be a good person, and I live my life that way. And like, I just don't understand like why people are mean. And like, I used to take all that very personal. Now, of the frame of mind that I am and the emotional, like it doesn't bother me at all. I expect it. 10 years ago, I could not have handled it. There is no way, I would have been off the internet forever. So I think again, that circumstantial has to do with life, has to do with your own personal growth and where you are. As far as OnlyFans goes and Fansly, that was kind of interesting how that came about. I probably won't do that forever. My content on there is strictly nude pictures or videos of myself only. I don't do any collaborations. I don't do anything sexually explicit. Think like Playboy, not Hustler. Or think like like the old school, like, pinup girls that were naked, that kind of stuff. Part of that, again, has to do with my own comfortability, because I would have never been able to do that before. And because, like, because frankly, I think women compare themselves and, judge themselves. We're like our worst critic. So part of it was my own comfortability. And then part of it, quite frankly, came out of personal need. And I don't tell people this. Like, I think I've told 5 people this, but I'll be honest with you and tell you because you asked me. And that is that I run my own business, nothing to do with any of this. I started my own business. I actually run 3 different companies, and I am a chief marketing officer for a completely different company that I don't own. And my husband ran his own company, and my husband got very sick about a year and a half ago. He had 2 heart attacks. He got very sick. And when you are in business for yourself and you're making a lot of money, when the money stops coming in, there's still liabilities that have to be paid. And, I worked to build everything I have in my life, my entire life. I worked for it, and I wasn't going to lose my house. I wasn't going to lose my home, my businesses. I had to make a decision, as to what I was going to do to pick up some extra income. And then, like I said, it kind of played hand in hand with, well, you know what? I'm really comfortable with myself and my body. So why not? Let's give it a shot. And that's really the truth of how it came about. Oh, wait, I can't hear you, hon. Hold on.
No,
Oh, there
sorry,
you
sorry,
are.
sorry, sorry.
Yep. Okay.
Because I turned my mic off. Sorry. But I was gonna say, so how does that feel now? Because a lot of people have like this common, I don't want to say misconception, but this idea that if you have a child and you're doing OnlyFans or anything like I guess like sexual or anything of that nature, your child's going to have like issues, especially in school, right? Like,
Yep.
do kids know? Do your kids know?
Mhm.
Like, do kids know at school? Like stuff like that. Like,
Yeah,
talk.
so my oldest is 30, my youngest is 15. The 15-year-old is homeschooled, but she still has a social life, obviously. And yes, it was very important to me. I live a very transparent life with myself and with my family, and that's just how I've chosen to live always. So when this was a decision that I made with my husband, the first thing I did was go to my kids one at a time and tell them what I was going to do before I did it. Not only because of that, but because, I was always the hot mom, so to speak. Now, I didn't look for attention. Like, we've always had a pull. I didn't go out in a bikini. Like, I was a good mom. I stayed in and like stayed away from the kids, but I was always a hot mom. It drove my kids bananas. So, and I live in a very small beach town. So I knew, regardless of my own desire to be honest and be transparent, there's no way I would keep it a secret. This thing was going to hit like crazy, and I was going to be judged for it, and I was going to, and whatever. But I knew that it wasn't going to be able to stay under wraps. So the first thing I did before we did anything was sit them down individually and say, hey, look, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm not doing. This is why we're doing it. And I want you to know this, so you understand the motivation behind it. And you also know what my limits are and your father's limits are, and that we're both in agreement. And, so that if you're asked questions, you understand how to handle that. I also had to have that conversation with my 80-year-old parents who were not happy at all. I mean, and I don't blame them. I understand it. I was raised Catholic. I'm not Catholic anymore, but I was raised that way. And my parents, I knew there was a matter of time, that they would find out as well. So I had to have that conversation, and it was difficult conversation, but at the same time, I was raised and I tried to raise my kids the same way that, you know, it's not about judging somebody for your beliefs, right? Like my parents, I'll tell you exactly what my parents said. Like, my parents were like, well, you know how we feel about it. We don't like it. We wish you didn't have to do this. I'm sure they're praying every night. They're like every night, like, save my soul. I'm sure they are, like, because they love me, not in a bad way, but they're like, we don't agree with it. We hate that you have to do this, but we understand and we love you. And that's literally the way I was raised. That's how they treated me. And that's how the majority of my kids have responded to me. They also know their father was sick. He's had heart attacks. Like, it's, it wasn't just, hey, I want to be not that there's anything wrong with this, but it wasn't like, I want to be an OnlyFans model. I think that would be a whole other issue when you had kids, if you chose that over the kids, so to speak. But, our situation was a little bit different. And so it was really important to us to have that conversation.
Well, how does that, what was that kind of conversation with your husband? Because, I mean, this is just a personal stance, right? If I would not let my girlfriend, do something like that, right? That's just me,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And I think you can understand why. So, what was that conversation like? How come he was more open with it?
So we've been married we've been together 30 years in July. We've been married 29 years. There is an entire history there. When you're with someone that long, they know you. They know your motivations. They know your heart. They know everything about you. There's nothing hidden. We have an absolutely fantastic relationship. Additionally, we have a fantastic sexual relationship. There's nothing I'm missing. And I'm not saying that like that's a problem. I mean, everybody's relationship is different. But me, I'm happy. I love my husband. He loves me. Like, and, literally, like, we have a great sex life. My kids are like horrified. They're like, oh my God, you guys are so gross. You're still doing it, because we're like ancient to them. And, so it was a kind of a different experience because he was like, whatever you want to do, you do, babe. Like, I got you. Like, if I was like, we're going to sign porn contracts, he'd be like, are you sure you want to do that? Okay, well, like, he would support me 100%. And that, he was a different man 10 years ago. He was a different man 20 years ago. First of all, I would have never done this 5 years ago. I would have never done this. I wouldn't have been comfortable with myself enough to do it. And, like I said, my motivation wasn't necessarily, the same as others. So, but he was also a different man. So I think a lot of it has to do with, our relationship together, the time we spent, and who I was. He knows I didn't have 20s and 30s. He knows I wasn't confident and comfortable in my skin for years. I was a mom. I had 5 babies. Like, I gained 50 pounds 5 times and then worked it off. Like, and he really supports me and loves me because he loves to see me for the first time in these last few years celebrate myself. Like I'm literally just, you know, celebrating myself and kind of grew into myself, if that makes sense.
Well, so my next question, and this is a little bit less of a serious question, it's more of a fun question. But what are some of these offers that you're getting from guys? I know that people have probably thrown massive amounts of money to do interesting things. So I want to hear all about that.
I don't do it. So here's the other thing. Besides my kids, I own businesses, and it's one thing for nude pics to end up on the internet. I mean, I go out on my boat and I get nude, so I'm not afraid of being nude. But it's another thing for porn to end up on the internet. And again, no judgment, but for me, having kids and having businesses, I was like, I can't go down that road. Besides that, on a personal level, there are some things that I do keep private, and I wouldn't want to share, publicly for any amount of money. I've been offered porn contracts over $1 million. I've turned them down. Because although it's a money motivator for me, it's not that kind of a motivator. You know what I mean? It's more of a motivator to take care of my family and, maintain the businesses and home that I've built, as opposed to I want to go get rich and be famous. It's just not like that for me. So I've been offered porn contracts. I get the funniest requests from people sometimes too. I can't make this stuff up. I just was laughing today. I had a text or a message from someone that was like, God love him. And I'm not going to say anybody's name because they're genuine and I don't judge people, but it's just hilarious. Somebody was like, when I get out of prison, we should go on a date. I was like, wait, you're in prison? Like, what? And I was like, huh? And then like my standard response to that is, well, can my husband come? Because people don't know if I'm still married or not, and again, no judgment. I'm not a swinger, but my husband and I are very open about everything and we're very down to earth. And a good majority of my friends are swingers. They know I'm not, but I prefer their company. I enjoy hanging out. I like being naked. And so when I come back with that response, I either get like a shocked, oh my God, I didn't mean to be disrespectful, or yeah, come on. So it's always a funny response, but yeah, I get crazy requests. I don't do anything really, really crazy. I'll do like custom photos or videos where somebody wants me to smoke a cigarette or do something naked, like, I don't know, wash the dishes or wash the car or like do jumping jacks, or like one time I had to do a workout routine, stuff like that. I'll do, no problem. But I don't know, a lot of, stuff like, I think one of the funniest, this is so horrible. One of the funniest things I was ever asked, well, two things. One was they wanted me to do a video farting. I was like, what? It's like, yeah, will you make me a video farting? You want to pay me like $300? And I was like, no, like, I can't do that. Like, I would die. I would laugh. And if that came out on the internet, I would just be like, I'd rather be naked on the internet than farting in a video. You know what I mean? Like, and then another guy this is probably the worst one, wanted me to do, and they're very polite. People, believe it or not, I thought it was going to be a lot more raunchy and rude, and they're not. They're very polite, but so I don't like kink shame or care. I just laugh and I'm like, yeah, sorry. The one guy wanted me to do some like anal stuff with my finger and then like smell it and talk about it, and I was like, yeah, sorry dude, I can't be doing that. you know
So my next question is, what's like the most outrageous amount of money that you've had to turn down? Like for something like minor. I'm not talking like the porn contracts. I'm talking about like the things that you'll get offered to do. Because I've heard everything. Like, I got offered $3,000 to step on eggs, like that sort of shit. Like, I've heard everything. So what is more of like your side of that? Like, what have you seen in terms of like people offering you outrageous amounts of money to do something seemingly innocuous, weird, whatever?
I haven't gotten a lot of kink requests like that. I mean, I would do that. That stuff's fine. Like I'll step on eggs or, whatever, or like squish my toes. I'm like, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that kind of stuff. But I don't get a lot of that, believe it or not. I get propositions to spend the night with someone and I get offered ridiculous amounts of money. And, I've never done it. And, it's just not me. Again, no judgment for other people, but it's just not me. It's just, not who I am. But yeah, I've gotten offered ridiculous amounts of money. I think the highest one time to sleep with somebody, and well, actually, I think it was spend a weekend in Miami was 50,000. And I was like, yeah, I'm sorry, like can't, it's just not my thing. I'm turning 50. You know what I mean? If I was 25, I don't know what I'd be doing, but
Are there any? What's like? Okay, here's the opposite question. What's the lowest amount of money that somebody offered you to do something outrageous?
well, I have someone now that, and I haven't blocked him because I just think it's funny. It just makes me laugh. I have a great sense of humor too. Like it's really hard to offend me. You'd have to be just outright rude. I expect, a certain amount of stuff. So I have a guy now that follows me on Instagram, and he's on my one of my, OnlyFans or Fansly. And this guy messages me like all day long. And he he's always like, I love you, baby. I'm your boyfriend. Like, why aren't you talking to me? Like, oh my God. Like, and I remember Valentine's Day. He was like, I'm gonna take you out for Valentine's dinner. And like he doesn't live anywhere near me or anything. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I'm always nice to people. That's the other thing about me. I'm always nice to people. And it's me they're talking to. They're not talking to a bot, they're talking to me. And I'm always like, hey, no, I can't, or whatever. And this guy was so funny. He had never bought anything I posted. He's in my messages nonstop. Never bought a single thing from me, but always like, I love you, I love you, I love you. I'm your boyfriend, your boyfriend, your boyfriend. And sometimes I'd answer him nicely, sometimes I wouldn't. And just when he was like, I'm getting paid next week, baby. I'm gonna send you some money. I'm like, okay, like, yeah, like, whatever. And of course he didn't send anything. And then like a week goes by and he sends another message. He's like, I'm so sorry, baby. And I'm like, oh, it's okay, love, whatever. Because what's it hurting me? I'm just being nice. Like it's not, he's fine. So finally he sends me some money. He's like, I sent you something, baby. I sent you something. Finally I got paid. And I was like, oh wow, look at this. So I go online and he sent me like $2. I was like, so I didn't say that. I was like, oh, thank you. Like I'm thinking, I can't even get a cheeseburger for that these days. But it was so funny. He was, I don't know. I haven't talked to him personally by phone or anything. So I don't know if it's legitimate, if he's just messing with me. But I was like, wow, in like 4 months, I got $2.
That kind of reminds. There's a video game. Also, I wanted to ask you before, but we didn't get to the chance to. How old do you think I am?
I don't know. You look young. So I would probably say late 20s.
No, 18.
Oh, wow. Good for you. And you know why I said that? You probably know this because you're mature. The way you speak, the way you act, you have definitely a maturity level. That's why.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Forgot what I was gonna say. Oh, wait, no, I actually forgot what I was gonna say, but it was a good question. Fuck. So we were talking about. Oh yeah, no. So there was a video game, by the name of GTA 5, and there's a scene in the game where he gives a woman one of the characters. He gives a woman $7, and it's like a famous video game clip. He gives this woman $7, and he's like, hey, buy yourself something nice. And she's like, sorting through the money. She's like, this is $7. And then he goes, I said something nice, not expensive. So imagine that guy was probably like along the same roads. That's really funny though. I never would think that would actually happen.
Yeah. You know what? That reminds me of too, something funny is my daughter, one of my kids, she's now 27. My second child used to do something similar when she was like a teenager. She doesn't do OnlyFans or porn or anything like that at all. But she would like randomly, her and her friends would get together like a girls' night, and they would randomly cash app like famous people. They'd look them up and find them and cash up like $1 and say, get yourself something nice. And they thought it was hilarious. And these people would answer. What was funny was like actual stars, and people would be like, what? Like, because now I'm sure they get everything, but this is back like, 10 years ago. And that just kind of reminds me of that. It was funny.
Who were some of the people that responded to that?
I don't want to say. There was country stars. There were several country stars.
Where are you based out of, by the way?
I split my time between Delaware and Florida. Right now I'm in Delaware near Bethany Beach. I have property in Florida as well. About half the month I'm there, half the month I'm here. My businesses are both in Delaware and Florida, but the same staff is in Delaware. So I'm primarily here, and this is my primary residence. However, I just put my house up for sale because my plan was I purchased property about 2 years ago, and my plan was that when my fourth child, who is now 18, graduates and leaves, I'm going to Florida. Well, I'm in that position now. She's 18, she's graduating. As I mentioned, I have a 15 turning 16-year-old, but she's homeschooled and she's ready to go. So I will be primarily in Florida as soon as this house sells. It's on the market now. But I'll spend summers here. I really like, this is, the area is called Del Mar, but it's Delaware, Maryland, Virginia. Absolutely love it. I grew up in the Northeast. It's just a beautiful area, especially in the summertime. So that's really the plan. And it's happening here now. And then I'll spend summers here and then winters in Florida.
Nice. I completely agree with that, by the way. I love Florida. I've only been once and it was wonderful. Down to Miami Beach. Good place. I love the water there personally. So I gotta ask, well, because I was gonna say, are you like a nude beach person? Like, are you?
I love, so I have a boat. I have a Tritune. We've always had a boat. Love boating. I have to live near water. I have to live near the beach. Like, that is just my happy place. That makes me happy as heck. I will go get I call it gas station margarita. They have these like margarita bottles at like gas stations all over the South, and it's like $10 for this bottle. I will go buy a $10 gas station margarita bottle and go to the beach and spend the day, and I am perfectly happy. There are some nude beaches in Florida. There's one about 45 minutes from me. It's above Cape Canaveral. I've been there. And that's called Playa Linda. I've been there before. I think I was the youngest person there by like 20 years, which truthfully, I don't care anyway. I don't care who's there or not, because that's the other thing about me is like, I mean, I was raised Catholic. I was a really, really good girl. And then I was, just very, mother and employee. And so now I'm at this age in my life where I'm just like, blah, whatever. Like, I don't care. I don't care if nobody's around. It just feels good to be naked. I'm happy as shit when I'm naked, And so it could be a million senior citizens. It could be, nobody. I don't care. Like, it's for me, it's freeing for me. You know what I mean? So I will go to nude beaches, no problem. As I mentioned earlier, most of my friends in Florida are swingers. They're in the swinger community, in the lifestyle community. I go to those nude swinger clubs all the time. I enjoy it. They're fun. It's like the judgment-free zone. It's like absolute freedom. Contrary to what people who aren't familiar with that lifestyle think, nobody messes with you. Like, I feel very, very comfortable there. I go to several nudist communities as well, and pools. That's my favorite thing to do, is hang out naked at a pool all day long, and in the sun, and I'm just, perfectly happy.
Have you ever been recognized in public?
Oh my gosh, yeah. And I always think it's hilarious because I'm like, me? Like, I always just think it's hilarious. Like, usually it's airports, and it's a lot of it's tattoos. You know what I mean? Because tattoos are, I don't know. I might be just a pretty blonde, but the tattoos, like, stick in somebody's memory.
Right.
I have had people. It's funny. I'll get sometimes guys will message and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, I partied with you, and we were at this swinger party last year." And I'm like, "Yeah, bro, it wasn't me." Like, I don't go to private parties. I go to like clubs and stuff, and I don't typically mess around. If I ever have, it's only with my husband publicly. But I'll get like I don't know, somebody had a wild night with some beautiful blonde with big boobs and tattoos, and they think it was me. And I'm like, yeah, it wasn't me. I get that all the time. I do get recognized a lot at airports. I live in a small town in Delaware. Everybody knows me in Delaware. Everybody knows who I am, so they knew who I was before. So it's really not kind of a famous thing here. Florida, very often as well. I'm always, like I said, it's always just amazing to me. One time I was on a flight back. So I fly back and forth to Florida a lot because it's cheap. Frontier is $29 round trip sometimes, or $39 round trip. Direct flight out of Philly or out of Baltimore. So one time we were flying back from Orlando to Philly, and my husband and I were on two aisle seats, and I'm on the right, he's on the left, and there's a guy next to him. We were sitting on the plane before takeoff. The guy's scrolling Instagram. My picture comes up, and my husband goes like this, and the guy looks at him, and he goes, points the picture, and he points to me, and the guy goes like this. He goes, and I just started laughing. I had like a hat on. It was like, I don't know, like 6 in the morning. I'm like a hat on. I'm like, no makeup. Like, I'm like, and he was like, oh my God, it's you. Like, so stuff like that'll happen. And I'm sure the phone like recognizes, the proximity of each other, and the algorithm, sets it up. But I always just laugh. I think it's funny.
Well, so have you ever had any Well, like what are some of the more like interesting things that people have said to you, like both in person or just like the occasional DMs? Because DMs are very different from your subscribers and people like that, as well as people that meet you in real life. Or I would hope are much more polite than they are on the internet. So what are some of those interactions like? What are they?
Well, I will say this. I expected things to be much worse on the internet, on Instagram, and in DMs, and on OnlyFans. I didn't know, and I just kind of prepared myself and expected it. And really, I'm surprised that I don't get roasted more. You know what I mean? Like, I'm surprised. I expected to be. And of course, every now and then there's some asshole that says something. And like I said, I usually just laugh or block them or whatever. But I'm really honestly surprised that it does not happen a lot. People are genuinely very nice. And I think that based off of, you know, my own, I guess, market research, meaning talking to people and hearing people and just who I am as a person. I think it's because I'm authentic. I'm very authentic. It's what you see is what you get. And I'm very nice to people. I don't have to be everybody's cup of tea. No problem. If you don't like me, you don't have to like me. If you don't like tattoos, I'm not offended. No problem. You know what I mean? Like, I'm happy with my life. I'm not looking for approval from people. And I think that one of the things that came out of this that I did not expect whatsoever is sometimes I'll do like these real talks about relationships. And really, it's about things I've learned because I've been with my husband for 29 years. Like, you learn a lot, you go through a lot. And what's funny is we've been married twice in 29 years. I married him, I divorced him, I went into the Air Force. Divorcing him was the best thing I ever did because he got his shit together. And then I married him again. And, going through all of that, I've been through a divorce. I've been through fighting over kids. I've been through fighting over stuff you don't have. I've experienced this. And he grew up much, much differently than I did. I grew up in a, family, like a Catholic family. My mom and dad are still married. He grew up in a completely dysfunctional family, with like abuse and whatnot. And so, I went through all these things and I felt like, okay, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to be authentic. I'm going to talk about things that are important to me. And if nobody's listening, oh, well, it kind of really was like that. I was like, well, if nobody cares, nobody cares. But these things are important to me and I learned them. And I know I, as a person, am inspired and motivated by people who share their own stories and who are vulnerable. And I hear that and that like inspires me and makes me feel good. And I started doing that months ago and I didn't know what was going to happen because, again, I wasn't doing it for a response. But what happened was really incredible because it really floored me. It gave me a whole different sense of responsibility because people were listening to what I was saying and people looked up to me. To me, I'm just this, goofy 50-year-old woman doing her thing socially, but people are really watching that. Like, they're listening to me and they're hearing this and they're relating to it and they feel like they can connect. And I mean, I can't even tell you, I've had people, it's heartbreaking. I've had people, no lie, multiple people that were ready to commit suicide. And I randomly posted something nobody had ever talked to before. And they'll message me and they'll message me a video and they're crying. And they're like, I know you'll probably not answer this, but I heard your message. And I was literally, within seconds of taking my life, or like, it is just absolutely heartbreaking. I didn't even anticipate having that kind of reach to people just by being authentic and honest about my experiences. And so it kind of brought this whole other level of responsibility with it, that I did not expect. So, I mean, that's been something that totally changed. As far as comments, rude comments and stuff, I don't get a lot. Like I said, I mean, people are definitely, in this day and age, keyboard cowboys, like, they're behind something so they can say whatever they want to say. But I mean, I would say if I don't keep stuff like this, but if I really wanted to, I could probably, like every other woman out there, have this giant dick pic collection, like crazy pictures every day. And like, hey, you want to see this? Watch this. Or, I don't report anybody. I don't care. It's not a big deal to me, whatever. But I also don't really engage in that kind of stuff either.
Now I have to ask the ultimate question, which is, have any famous people slid in your DMs?
Yeah, I've actually met a number of people, nothing funky, no sexual relationship, nothing like that at all. But I've actually been blessed because of this social exposure to, and it's Instagram. It's not only fans or fansly, Instagram, to meet and get to know several famous people that I would have never known otherwise. That I really like, that I've become, I would consider them friends of mine that I've met. And again, nothing, not that it matters, but I think it adds authenticity to it when I say nothing's happened. It wasn't for sexual reasons, really the opportunity came socially, and you know, I found them very authentic. They found me such, and we've become friends. Probably the biggest example of that people have seen me post about a lot is Ivan Moody with Five Finger Death Punch. Love Five Finger Death Punch,
Oh
always
yeah.
did. Met him through Instagram over tattoos. Like we literally just, we're talking over tattoos. I've been to his shows. I've gone, backstage. I've seen his stuff. I text him. We talk all the time, and he's really just a friend. Like he is a great guy. He's a very authentic, awesome person. So I mean, everybody from like that's probably the most famous that people would know, but like wrestlers or like sports stars. And, I've got a number of professional hockey players or baseball or football. And I don't want to, for privacy reasons, say who they are. But again, it's not even anything sexual. Like we've literally just become friends, but that opportunity came about through Instagram.
Well, I do want to wrap it up in like the next few minutes. So the last question I'm probably gonna ask is, what advice would you give to young people?
Ugh, well, I mean, I have daughters. I have three girls. I have two boys. And my youngest is probably the most impressionable because she's 15, turning 16. As I said kind of in the beginning, she knows exactly what I do and don't do. She, I don't hide it from her at all. She's actually gone on my computer, and I had a screen up and didn't even know it. And she was reading. When I first started doing this, she was like, "Oh, I read your OnlyFans messages." And I was like, "What?" I was like, "You shouldn't have done that." She was like, "Well, I thought you were lying. I thought you were just telling me that." But she was like, "But you really are only doing what you're saying you're doing." Like she was checking up on me, and like, I was like, "I have no reason to lie to you, honey. I'm doing what I told you I'm doing." And so she is probably the most impressionable. But what I tell her, about everything is think before you do it. Thank God social media wasn't what it is when I was a kid. I mean, my God, who knows what they'd be pulling up. And I was a good kid. I didn't do crazy stuff, but I mean, I went through my craziness. Everybody does. You know what I mean? Like I was like, I went through my wild stages and my craziness, and the pictures that you send, the pictures that you post, they don't ever go away. And what you want and what you see and the life maybe that you desire at your age or at that age changes. Maybe you don't change the person in terms of your core values, but what you want changes and your life changes, and you don't want to do something then that you'll regret later. It's the same thing with tattoos. As I said, I worked in corporate America. I started out very slowly. I loved tattoos, but I did not start tattooing everything until I was self-employed, until I was 40 years old. And then I was like, "Oh, hey, I'm done now. I'm self-employed. I don't have to worry about it," because I didn't want to be judged for that. I didn't want, people to impede my, career in technology, because I was judged by how I looked, and so that was different then, where now I'm like, I don't care, I'm going to get judged, regardless, and it doesn't bother me. It's a different phase of life. So I think that's it. Is just that, what you want now, it won't always be that. It will change, it will grow, and it will morph. And you don't want to make permanent decisions now that, are you're going to regret later.
All right. Sounds like a good place to end off. Any final words to the audience?
No, I mean, thank you. Like I said, I am incredibly amazed by this experience on the daily. I think it's a lot of fun. I'm just doing me and having a great time. And I appreciate people's support. I really do. I didn't expect it. As I mentioned earlier, I really thought it was going to go a lot worse. But, I really have met a lot of wonderful people, even just average everyday people that have become friends of mine that are in my inbox and literally talk to every day. "Hey, how are you? I got to work. I got home like safe." And and I honestly feel incredibly blessed to be in that position. So that's it. I mean, thank you. I appreciate it.
No problem. I'll stop the recording in 3, 2.